All right. Good afternoon, everyone. And I guess good morning still on the West Coast. Good Friday morning, I think, if we're on the in Australia. I'm not sure if you've got all your Australia fans that are on here, Bruce.
I think there's only one, Jeff. I think the one Australian that likes me is here.
Well, you can't fly there yet with your plane. That's probably the issue that you've got. But we've got a great webinar. Bruce and I were just talking about it here. A great webinar that is planned for today. We've got a full house of attendees that are registered for this. And so I'm your host, Jeff Johnson, here, president of MSP Success Magazine, also here at Technology Marketing Toolkit as well. And one thing that I wanted to is, as everyone's getting piled in, and I wanted to give something of a little bit of a promo, and Bruce is actually included as part of this. And I've got a special offer specifically just from Bruce and the team.
Wait, me a special offer? Like what?
I know. Look at that, Bruce.
Unheard of. Like who would come up with something like that?
So we've got this here, and let me get it shared. So we've got our next generation MSP tour. You see the URL that's on there right now. I'll post it in the chat also. So nextgenmsptour.com. We're going to 10 cities this year. We were actually in Tampa with Bruce just a couple of weeks ago. We're going to be in Charlotte coming up in about 2.5 weeks, Pittsburgh a couple of weeks after that, and then on throughout the country that we're going around on this tour. These are, very much in the trenches presentations. If you like what Bruce is talking about today, which I guarantee that you will, that you're really going to love going to this. Bruce kicks off the day of these. If you go to nextgenmsptour.com right now, it's $297 to attend. But if you use the coupon code Galactic19, and I'll put it in the chat for you, Galactic19, you can register for any of these 9 cities here for only $19. And so this is a special. Bruce is one of our top sponsors for this tour and these events. He does a fantastic session during these. We also have others that are multi-million-dollar MSPs that have grown into where they're at right now. They're sharing on hiring, on building your tech stack, on building your marketing out in your business, and on through it. It is a fantastic one-day local event here for you to be able to go to. So nextgenmsptour.com, and it is Galactic19 will give you a ticket to any of these 9 cities per person for only $19.
Yeah, Jeff, the reason we ended up doing this, so we went to the one in Tampa, and we only had 2 partners there, two of the folks that use Galactic. By the way, how many of you guys can you just hit me in chat? Like if you use Galactic, just hit us in chat so we can see that. And also, if you're going to be, at that event, come the day before. There's a happy hour the day before, and it's a lot of fun, and it's a good chance to kind of catch up. And when I was there was only 2 partners at the last one. So I want to show a little bit more Galactic love to this event if we could.
See, now with you saying that, Bruce, now I'm going to have to post it again at the URL and the coupon code because it's going all the way down in the chat here.
Oh, shoot.
And I know someone said, what happened to California here? Bruce's plane doesn't fly all the way. No, that's not why we didn't do it. We did go to Phoenix on this one here. We had to pick 10 cities with it. So we get fairly close to California. I would encourage you, if you are in California, get to the Portland or the Phoenix events there that are later in the year. This is also actually worth of making a trip. I mean, if you've never been to Omaha, Nebraska, and you wanted to check out Omaha, then it's worth it. It's only $19 for the event. It probably is not that expensive for the airfare to be able to get there too. And we've got special room rates on that also. So I will post that up again here in the chat, but I want to get focused on today's. Bruce is going to be talking about QBRs, how to make these of where your clients are begging you to meet with them, which I know is a big issue for everyone. A little bit of background on Bruce, that he'll probably share some other things about himself and his background, but Bruce has been one of our top clients, top members for years, sold his MSP just a few years ago, right before the COVID pandemic here, but he's a two-time Better Your Best finalist. He's presented at Producers Club meetings, not only as a member, but also, last week we were in Producers Club in San Diego, and I took a picture of it because no one else from a vendor side of things could fill a room at, what was it, Bruce, 7:30 a.m. in the morning, being able to fill a room. We did give everyone mimosas there, but I don't think it even mattered with that. Where just Bruce's content is so well respected. He's got great material, great actionable steps that you can take here. And almost everyone in the room raised their hand that, yes, I'm a Galactic partner. There was like the three people on the side that didn't know what he was talking about.
Jeff. There were 4 that didn't know what I was talking about. So yeah. Hey, Jeff, one thing too, before I can share my screen, I think you have to move me from like being a attendee to being a presenter or something, because I have 2 choices right now. I can leave the webinar or I can cancel.
All right, I'm gonna make you as a co-host here. All right, there we go.
All right, let's see
Should
how
be
that...
able to. So I'm gonna turn it over to you, Bruce. I will be here watching the chat, watching the Q&A, but get your pen and paper ready, because Bruce is gonna have a ton of things that you're gonna wanna take advantage of right now in your business.
Yeah, and I'm gonna go through that as soon as I can get Zoom to show me the little thing. Just give me a second, guys. So,
Bruce, did I mess you up with this on not making you a host in time?
yeah, it's making me sign in or join a meeting. Give me 1 second, guys.
Yeah, so one of the things that, as Bruce is going through doing this, is that one of the things that I would say with Bruce here, we just lost him here, but he'll be right back, I'm sure. Is that Bruce from scratch of grew a MSP business all the way up to, I believe it was 8 million in revenue, multi-location in Ann Arbor, Michigan, Nashville, New Orleans as well, where he still maintains. Yeah, Francois, I see that. I'm sure the MSPs could help. Unfortunately, this is a Zoom type of thing that we've got. So hopefully Bruce is back here in just a moment here on this. But he grew that, and that's really where you've got it, is that Bruce, is coming from growing his business, being exactly where you guys are at. Bruce, we got you back.
Yeah, hey, that leave the meeting actually does what it says it's going to do, and it literally left the meeting. So I'm back. That's good. Just switching some displays around now, and we will be off to the races. Guys, this is why you always start your webinar early. And in this case, yeah, sorry to keep everybody waiting here.
All right, there we go.
Hey, can you see the screen? This is awesome. Okay, guys.
Hey, Bruce, just from a timing perspective, since we had a little technical difficulty, just know that if you need to go a little past the top of the hour then no problem at all on that.
Okay, I will do it. Guys, I have a lot of stuff to cover. I know a few of you guys are probably sitting there wondering, like, who the heck is Bruce McCulley? Let's just kind of get started there. I grew my MSP to 8.5 million, like Jeff was talking about. And to kind of give you some idea what our growth looked like, in 2019, we grew by 1.3 million. A major way we were doing that was going into hospitals and recovering them from ransomware. And as you can probably imagine, they don't call you from a hospital's IT team when everything went exactly right. They contact you when everything, well, didn't go the way they planned. Before I get started, have any of you guys dealt with a ransomware event? Like, I'm talking, how many devices have you dealt with when it comes to ransomware? Hit us in chat, 1 through 50, 500, 200, 700. 1,000. Guys, the events that we were getting pulled into were events where instead of 1 or 2 devices were being hit, it was like 11 to 1,200 devices. That's when we would get pulled in. And I have to tell you that, one, this is really stressful. It's terrible to work through, and it's terrible for a couple of reasons. One, you never know when that event is going to pop up. So you're always kind of sitting on the edge of your chair. You're always wondering, holy cow, is this going to be an incident response that we're going to have to get back into? And one of the things that we started to notice is that, well, there were a number of commonalities in these attacks. And a big component of that came down to who was supporting that network. What we found is that when MSPs and MSSPs were doing the security in those networks, that's when the attackers were able to move laterally. And I noticed that there was these commonalities that were making it so hackers could really focus on going after hospitals that were being protected by MSPs. And I decided that since our community was under attack, I wanted to do something about it. I sold my MSP and I started Galactic to help protect 1 million people. We do 3 things here. We provide third-party assessments for you and for your clients. These are stress-free third-party assessments where we're going through and doing the analysis. We're not selling anything. We also link our findings to tools, training, and frameworks to actually address those findings. And finally, we give you a really easy way to show your prospects that their current providers at the sleep at the wheel. So that's what we do here at Galactic. I'm not here to talk about that stuff though today. What I want to talk about is this new threat that we're seeing to our community. And it's completely different than what you expect. Imagine losing your largest client, and I'm talking $44,000 per month, to a competitor who's charging less than that. Not just a little bit less, a whole lot less. Imagine they're charging $28,000 per month, 56% less. What does that mean? Think about it. What does that mean? When I was running my MSP, we lost a hospital. I remember when that happened. And to me, that meant we had to make a decision. We had to decide whether we're going to suck it up or sacrifice profit. And if we decided to suck it up, that meant going for months until we found a new prospect to replace that one. And if we decided to not sacrifice profit, if we decided to actually fix the issue, that means that we had to go through and take people off the team. That's terrible. That's terrible. So I was talking to one of our partners, gosh, it was about a week and a half ago now. And he was explaining to me how they just lost a $44,000 a month contract. And it was to this competitor charging not 56%, less than 50% of the price. And what's going on is very simple. One word: commoditization. And the question is, can you really compete with somebody charging $47 per month all in? And if you can't answer yes to this, then we need to talk. You need to go through the rest of this webinar. I suggest you take out some paper, jot some notes down. We're going to dig into how to make that happen, because if you can become that trusted advisor, you can make sure that you're not losing clients to people like this. And you can also make sure that you're winning new business. But you have to become the trusted advisor. And I want you to think about this question. Are you their trusted advisor right now? And a good way to measure that is, have you ever had a client that's not interested in doing that quarterly review with you? If you have a client that doesn't value the conversation that you're having with them in that quarterly business review, or QBR, enough to actually make the appointment, then you know that you have a problem. And that problem comes down to, you have a situation that you're not the person that they see as that trusted advisor. So this is the big question. This is the elephant in the room. And how do you make that possible? Well, the key here is that you don't want to go through and talk about technology. That's not what you want to do. If you're going through and you're talking about technology, that means that you're relegated to Techland. You're not the trusted advisor. You're the person that closes tickets for them. You're the person that fixes their computer when it doesn't work. And that does not lead to a relationship that can be overcome, especially when you run into a situation where somebody's charging less than $50 an endpoint. So being relegated to Techland is a very, very dangerous place to be. And the thing is that while you're in Techland, you're not that trusted advisor. And so let's kind of take a look at what I'm talking about here. So you think about your current security stack. You probably have a basic IT solution. You have an advanced security solution. If you're listening to me, you've split them up. We'll talk about why that's important in a minute. And you have a compliance as a service solution. And each one of these pieces has been commoditized. Let's take a look. So basic IT, I'm in Nashville right now. If I Google computer support Nashville, this is one of the first hits that I get of it. And Electric claims that they can do my support for 50% what I'm spending today. And if you take a look at what these folks are doing, this is a bunch of different people. Now, this is not just Electric. I found this on a couple of other websites too. This is one of them, basic IT services for $42.50. So the question is, how do you compete with this? And the other thing that you have going on is, what are these folks doing? And the question is how do you keep your clients in the room and want to actually go through and do these assessments? And the key here is, if you're not giving them value, they're not going to want to do that. In fact, if they think that every time that you sit down with them, you're trying to sell something, this might be your fault. So what can you do here? Well, the answer is you have to move through and think about how to present these different components. We're going to dig into that in a minute. Before I do, though, if you take a look at all of these different components, you take a look at the advanced security, the basic IT, the compliance as a service, each one of these has been commoditized. When we think about compliance as a service, we see folks commoditizing that, like the folks at Comply Auto, $1,000 per month to be compliant. And then if we look at commoditization of that advanced security stack, how does that happen? Comply Auto will sell advanced security for $9 a month. So what does that mean? Well, that means $47 all in with your entire stack is a possibility. And the question you should be asking yourself is, how do I get to the very top? How do I get to the top of this stack and stay there? And that's what we're going to focus on today. We're going to focus on how to make that happen. Okay, so what we're going to be talking about is we're talking about 5 easy steps to creating instantly valuable quarterly business reviews. And the stuff that I'm going to go through, this happens whether or not the economy is going up or whether you think the economy is going down. You can actually go through and use the process that I'm going to go through with you to increase your revenue and increase your relationship with your clients. Okay, so let's dig in. We're going to cover 5 things today. The first thing that we're going to dig into is the one more trap. Then we're going to talk about your service package. Then we're going to dig into keeping their interest. We're going to talk about making them the star of the conversation. And finally, we're going to talk about why you want to have a process. So let's jump right in here. The one more trap. What I'm talking about when I say the one more trap is the just one more thing trap. And the good way to think about this is, if you today sell your security a la carte, as in you sell it piecemeal. If I'm interested in getting a SIM, you'll sell me a SIM. If I'm interested in getting training for my team, you'll sell training for my team. If I want dark web monitoring, you'll sell me dark web monitoring. And every time you sit down with something, when you sit down with your client, when you go through these findings, they feel like you're doing one thing, and that's trying to sell them something. Why is that happening? Well, there's some growth happening in the MSSP market. 183% growth in the global MSSP market happening right now. That's crazy talk. Think about that. What if your MSP were growing at 183%? Could you keep up? Well, maybe not. So we start to see these products start having less and less capability, less and less stability, all of those things start to show up. But at the same time, something else is happening. If you went to Black Hat last year, that's a security conference in Vegas, there's tons of folks there. There were 370 security vendors there, and each one had between 2 and 5 products. That means that you could sit down with each of your clients every single day for 2 or 3 years before you got through all of those products. And every time you do that, when you sit down with your client and you say, hey, there's this new thing, I want to make sure that you're aware of it. I want to make sure that you're doing this new thing. And by the way, if you don't buy this new thing, I'm not going to be able to work with you. Does that sound familiar? Because I know a number of you have made that statement to your clients. Well, here's the problem. Every time you do that, they start to wonder what is going on, because they don't understand why those particular products are important. And it makes them feel like every time you sit down with them, you have something new that you want to sell them. And that also erodes trust, because you haven't spent the time to help them understand the why. All right, so that's the one more thing trap. But what about your service package? How do we go through and get that lined up? What if your client doesn't want to meet with you because, well, they want to ditch you, as in they want to be done with you, as in they're looking for somebody else, and that's why they're skipping your QBR meeting? What if that's the case? And the answer is, you might be price gouging them, or at least they feel that way. And what I mean by that is, I want you to think about this. Do your clients think they pay too much for your service? That's a hard question. And if you have your solution like this, where you have your basic IT, your advanced security, and you combine the two of them together, the chances of them thinking that they are overspending are much higher than if you do it this way. If you have the basic IT services separate and in a different area. Let me just show you why that is. So if you come up against a competitor, let's say you have a competitor that shows up at $47 a month. Okay, let's say you have a competitor, they show up at $47 a month. You have packaged together your basic IT and your advanced security. You have that all packaged together, like we're talking about here. Your client sees that as costing 2.8 times more. And usually, think about it, who do you meet with when you do your QBRs? Sometimes a business owner, but more often the CFO, and that person isn't really that technical. Like, they're not really that technical. And so that CFO now has to go and maybe communicate to other people, other stakeholders like the CEO, the owner, and other folks. They have to communicate the value of your service while they're seeing, and those other folks are seeing these advertisements, they're seeing that you're spending 2.8 times more. So the key here is to change your packaging. It's to have it set up so when you come against that competitor, you have a basic IT service that lines up. And then you have your advanced security, and they're additive, and they end up costing this amount. Now, this is a solution. It is not an option, okay? And the other thing that we're going to do here is we're going to add a model year. Now, I've talked about this in the past. Why do we have a model year? Because a model year creates a buying cycle. Remember those 360 different products that are coming out of the Black Hat conference? Or all those vendors that are sitting there trying to push their 2 to 5 different products on your lap? Well, those are all new products that have never been bought before. And the first time you buy one, you have to establish a buying cycle. And the thing is that buying cycles have already been established for all sorts of other goods. So if you think about a car, The difference between a new car and an old car is about 48 months. And so the buying cycle for a car is 48 months. When we think about managed services, the buying cycle is between 36 and 72 months. And the reason that lines up with contracts is because that's one of the reasons that those come up every 3 years. But the other thing that's going on here is it also aligns with technology refresh. So if you do a project, if you're going through and doing a project, the chances of you losing the client before the project or after the project are higher than any other time during that relationship with that client. Why is that? Well, if you've been doing a crappy job at service and you're about to do some sort of major technology refresh, the client is thinking to themselves, oh, I'm not really sure if we want to go through this with them. Let's hire somebody else and at least they'll be able to get this project done right. And then we'll switch to them. So that's why before projects can be dangerous. After projects are also dangerous. And that's because if you completely screw up the project, they're going to be looking for a new vendor after you're done. So my suggestion to you is twofold. One, define your buying cycle. We're going to define it as once a year for security upgrades. Okay, so that's the reason that we're going to do this. The other thing that I'm going to recommend is that you think about what I just told you when it comes to MSP buying cycles, and you start to consider the little bit of time before a refresh project and make sure you're doing great services at that time. And during the project itself, over communicate. As an owner, you might even want to get involved and talk to folks about it, etc. And then at the end of that project, follow up and make sure everything went great if it didn't fix it. Because if you don't, that's when you're going to lose that client. Now, I know a number of you guys are thinking to yourself, well, Bruce, I've heard you say that. I keep hearing you say that. Why does it matter? And the key thing here is if you don't do this, you are more susceptible to losing a client. Earlier this week on Monday, I was talking to one of our partners, and he did not have a separate advanced security stack. And he didn't have it because his clients don't want to invest in the advanced security stack. My answer to that is simple. Don't give them the option. It's not this or that. It's these two things. These are not options. And what we're looking at is when we see this, this is a solution. And when you have a situation where your client is now being prospected by or is now being communicated by somebody else's marketing that's saying something like $47 a month for IT services, it's very easy for you to point back to the basic portion of your solution. So that's what we're talking about today. That's what we're talking about when we're going through, we're talking about making this possible. Now, that all sounds good and easy. Why does it matter? So going back to that partner that was talking to me on Monday, he was concerned because his client was doing an RFP. He got asked to be part of the RFP. That's a good thing, guys. If your client is doing an RFP and they don't tell you about it, that's bad. In this case, they asked him, they said, hey, we're going to do this RFP. And they got the first set of results in, and they let him know that somebody came in at about $45 an endpoint. And he's like, that's almost a third of what we charge. Like, we're 3 times this amount. And I asked him, why is that? I kept asking him. And I come to find out he's rolled all of his M365 licenses into his solution. He's gone through and he's put his advanced security, every piece of his stack into that solution. And he has his basic IT backups, all that jazz in one monolithic stack. When that client goes to communicate to their board, goes to communicate to their CEO, goes to communicate to other people on their team, it's really hard for them to communicate the difference because they don't understand the difference between basic IT and advanced security when it's all stuffed into one thing. However, if you have it as 2 different pieces and you show them this is our basic solution, and this is their basic solution, it's about the same price. What you're missing here is this advanced security piece that makes it very easy for them to communicate. One of the things you want to do when you're putting your package together is you want to make it easy for your client to communicate with other people on their team. And that's a key piece to this. Okay, so the next piece, now we're going to get into the actual QBR. Why isn't your client interested in meeting with you quarterly? That's the big elephant in the room. That's the big question. And the answer is simple. They're not getting value out of that meeting. So when you meet with them and you talk about something like tickets, or maybe you talk about user satisfaction, or maybe you spend a bunch of time talking about the new Windows Server operating system and why all of their servers should be upgraded, all of a sudden you're putting them to sleep. This does not hold their attention, and they're thinking to themselves, oh crap, am I going to have to sit down with this person again next quarter and go through this again? So the question is what holds people's attention? And the answer is not what you think. People like to talk about them. People like to learn about things that are bad that are happening. If you don't believe me about this, just think about it. We're in the middle of an ice storm here in Tennessee. And I was driving along last night trying to get somewhere, and I was stuck behind this huge line of traffic. And we get to the thing that was keeping us stuck. I was expecting like 12 cars to be stacked up in the middle of the road or something like this. We finally get up there, and there was one car flipped over on its side, and there was like a couple of cop cars there. They were completely off the road, but everybody was slowing down to a crawl in order to see what was going on. People like to learn about bad things that are happening to other people. And if you don't take advantage of that, you're not going to be able to keep them in the room for your QBRs. The final thing that people are interested in is protections from risk. How do we prevent that event from happening to us? How do we not end up being that car on its side with a couple cop cars around it on the expressway? How do we keep that from happening? So that gives you a list of stuff they're interested in. This is not the stuff that you are interested in. As in, when you go and you think about all the things you want to share with them in a QBR meeting, you're probably thinking about things like, well, oh, I don't know, how well your team is doing and why they should keep investing in you, and all of the vulnerabilities you patched, or all of the different new tools you've released. When we talk about those things, but we don't put them in the context of what they are interested in, we all of a sudden lose them. And we all of a sudden lose that relationship. We make it so that we're not going to be able to keep them coming back for these quarterly sessions, because it's a big commitment for them to come and meet with you every single quarter. So the question is, how do we do that? And the answer is we start with a good agenda. I'm going to give you the agenda that we've seen work across the board. We've done this as a test, and we started 2 years ago out testing this, and we can tell you that this is very successful, and it gets people in the room every single time. We do a current cyber landscape. Okay, basically we talk about what's happening in the world. This is, hey guys, there's cars on the side of the expressway on their side with cops around them, and this is what that looks like. Also, in that current cyber landscape, we talk about events that have happened in the last 90 days. Now, these are events that are happening across the world. They're usually in bigger organizations, but they give business risk and they help people understand what's coming. And we also touch on changes in compliance there. Now, if you're doing something like this, we do have a program called Galactic Watch vCISO, and we provide these decks to you every single quarter. So that's something you could use if you're trying to get this together. You can also do this on your own. Okay, I'm going to go through everything that you have to do. You can do it on your own. You don't have to buy this product. Now, the next thing you're going to do is you're going to spend some time on risk posture. Now, I'm going to explain how to do that in a minute. Then you're going to spend time showing them all of their errors that their users are making that creates more risk in the environment. Why? because this is like showing them that car on the side of the road, but instead of it being on the news happening in a different city, in a different community, this is the one that's happening right there next to them. And then finally, we're going to move into projects. I'm going to give you a little twist to do projects in a very different way that keeps you from having to go through and be like, hey guys, you need to do this. All right, so we spent a little bit of time talking about the one more thing trap. You're not selling a la carte. We put everything together into a package. We also spent time talking about how you're going to keep your package from being monolithic, containing everything. Instead, you're going to break it apart into basic services and advanced security. Then we talked about how you're going to keep their interest. Now let's talk about how to make them the star, how to put them in the middle of your QBR meeting. So basically what we're doing is we're putting them in the picture. The question is how does their team screw up? As in, when something like this happens, like when somebody goes through and phishes one of their users, how does that occur and what does it mean? That's what we're going to do here. We're going to put them in the middle of the picture, because when we do that, then they ask us questions like, oh my gosh, how do we do this? How do we keep this from happening? And when can we get started on fixing it? Okay, so we create some urgency and understanding here. Now, you guys are all familiar with the sales process that we've worked with Robin's team on and that we've been able to put together in our product. You can use this with any product, doesn't have to be ours, but I'm just going to go through it with you real quick to remind you this sales process, our partners, when they use it, they're getting an 83% close rate. So we can tell you that this is successful. Here's how it works. You have an incoming lead. You find out what's going on. How do you get that incoming lead? Well, that's all Robin's marketing. Okay, if you're a first-time caller, go check out the Galactic Closer Look campaign. It works very, very well for this. That's going to get that prospect to call into your office, and you're going to ask what's going on, because something's happening that's gotten that person worked up enough to make the phone call, to pick up the phone, call your office and ask, plead, beg for help. On that phone call, you're going to gather a little bit of information, okay? Like, you can't just pick that bit of information up. We're going to have to know where are they calling from, their address, or not their address, but their name, and some of the other things that you guys need to ask. I'm not going to go through those. The other thing you're going to do, though, before you get off the call, and this is critical, you're going to schedule a 26-minute phone call. Now, that phone call is specifically designed to uncover risk. It's also designed to not be a technical phone call. So you can tell them, you can say, hey, I need to schedule a quick risk assessment phone call so we can understand what's going on in your environment. To do that, we don't need technical people there, just you, super simple. And I just need about 30 minutes of your time. In fact, we do this in 26 minutes most of the time. Then before that meeting, you're going to send over a credibility email that includes testimonials and non-disclosure agreements. If you're a Robin Robbins client, they have something called a digital shock and awe kit. It works really well for this. I would suggest you look into it. And I'd also suggest you consider using that non-disclosure agreement in that shock and awe kit. You can actually put that in there as a PDF. Then you're going to actually have that meeting. You're going to do the 26-minute phone call. During that 26-minute phone call, you're going to ask questions that uncover risk. Now, before you hang up, you're not going to get off the call yet. You're going to keep talking to them. You're not going to leave them. But before you hang up, you're going to send over the email. And if you're working with us, it's very simple. You send over an email with a link in it. You have them click the link while you're on the phone. You make sure that the little box with the dots pop up. And we start the analysis, and then we give you the results within 2 business days. So this is our normal sales process, but you wouldn't want to do this with your client. This is how you do it with a prospect. How do you do it with the client? So I'm just going to walk you through a very simple process for going through and getting a client to do this process. So the very first thing you're going to do is you're going to contact your client and you're going to tell them that you were thinking of them. What does that mean? Well, chances are you're watching this webinar because you're not already doing quarterly business reviews and you need to get back into them. One way to do that is to reach out to your client and say, hey, I was just going through an assessment for one of our other clients. And I noticed a couple things while I was doing it, and I thought about you because we haven't done one in a while, or we haven't done one, period. And so then you say to them, can I get 30 minutes of your time? We usually do this in 26 minutes, not even going to take a full 30 minutes, but can I just get a little bit of your time? And we'll go through and we'll get this done so that we can understand what's going on in your environment. And I'm going to go through a little bit more on how to position that in a second. Then you're going to go through and you're going to send over that credibility email, but it's not going to be packed with testimonials. That wouldn't make any sense. Instead, it's going to have survey results. What am I talking about? Well, when I was running my MSP, and I'm sure you guys do this too, we would ask our clients how we're doing. When we close out a ticket, there would be a little note that would say, hey, let's score our team. How do we do? 1 through 10 or whatever. We did thumbs up or thumbs down. But it also had a spot for comments. And often people would drop comments in those. I would put the comments in this email that I sent over to them. Why? Because they're seeing all the good things you're doing, but you don't have to tell it to them. You can just say, hey, I wanted to just send this over to you. Here's a couple of comments that your team made about the work that we're doing. Just wanted to share it with you. Looking forward to our 26-minute call. And this is a reminder email that goes out. Then you're going to do the 26-minute phone call. You're going to ask those questions, and you should already know all the answers, but that's okay. You're still going to ask the questions. You're not going to just fill it out. The reason you're going to ask the questions is you want them to think about these things. You want them to think about risk. And you can talk them through that whole process while you're going through that step. Then you're going to send over the email while they're on the phone call. You're not going to jump off the phone call yet. As you're asking the questions in our session, in our group of questions, just before you get to policies, there's a spot where we recommend you send out the email. You'll send the email. You say, hey, did you get the email? They'll say yes. Say, great, click the link. Dots pop up, all that stuff. Then you can say to them, hey, do me a favor. Send this to a few other people, but just forward it and say, click this link for me. I need the IT team to get this analysis. We need it in the next 24 hours. Why? Because you're kind of testing that team to see whether or not people just click the link. And what you'll find is even though they've been trained, when they get that email from their boss, they click the link. And then you do the readout, uncover risk, and you talk a little bit about why we might want to do this every quarter. Okay, so that allows us to now have the meeting. We get into the meeting. Now, guys, I want to be really clear here. All right, so now we're in the readout. When it's time for the meeting, my agenda has 4 things on it. There's a 5th one. There's a top one. It's actually item number 0. Okay, item number 0, be a human. Ask them how things are going. Check in with them. See what's going on. Why? Because the very first part of this is just making sure we maintain our relationship. Then you're going to go through, you're going to say, hey, here's some of the current cyber threats, things that have happened in the last 90 days. Here's some major vulnerabilities that we've solved. Here's some ones that we're monitoring still. Here's some things that are happening. Then you're going to jump in and you're going to talk about risk posture and user errors. And to do that, you're going to take out the report and you're going to have findings, right? We find passwords pretty often. And if your Advanced Security Stack 2022 didn't have a password manager in it, I suggest you consider a password manager in 2023, and that would be part of how this gets solved. But instead of just pointing this out and saying, oh my God, we cracked passwords, you're going to tell stories. Now, I talk about this pretty often. Why do we tell stories? Well, this is what raw data looks like. It's hard to see a pattern. So once we sort that data out, we turn it into something that's easy to see patterns in, but it's hard to relate one color to another. So then we turn it into a report. This allows you to see how things relate to each other. However, it doesn't make it memorable. It doesn't make it something that CFO or that IT contact or that person that's in the session can take back to the rest of the organization and talk about. That's what we want. We want something that they can share with the rest of the team, and that's where the story comes in. We have them explain it with a story. So I suggest you prepare with at least 3 stories. Why? Well, because There are going to be at least 3 findings that you're going to be going through every time this quarter. I want to make sure you're ready for them. What makes a good story? Well, it's simple. You start with the transition, you have a who, a current state, what happened, a business outcome, and you relate all of that back to a finding. So let me just go through this with you real quick. And I want to know first, those are the things. And I want you to think about this for a second. If I tell you this story, this is a perfect timing for this story too, because this happened a few years ago at this very time of year. So it's February. We get a call from a partner at an accounting firm, and they thought they were safe. They thought they had their security completely buttoned down, and they thought that until hackers came through and submitted 180 fraudulent tax refunds, making it so the IRS stopped allowing them to do e-filings. Imagine February right now, think about all of your accounting clients, how many of them could handle not being able to do an e-filing. That means they have to tell their client, hey, I'm really sorry, but we can't actually do an e-filing for you. All we can do is have a paper filing. And all of this happened because the attackers were able to get to a password. Okay, so that story, hit me in chat. How many of you have heard me tell this story 10 or 15 times from stage at this point? I'm pointing this out because I want you to have 3 different stories every single quarter. And if you're looking for different stories, hit me up the next time you see me at an event. I wrote a new book, Level Up vCISO edition. It's not Level Up with some lipstick on it. It's a completely new book just on vCISO services. Chapter 3 has a whole bunch of different stories that you can use to help illustrate risk. And it's very simple to share with those. You can go through and you can say, this is something our security team ran into if you're a Galactic partner, because we're your security team and those are things we ran into. So very easy. Now, why is this so important? Well, if you repeat the same story every single quarter, they're going to think that you're either demented or that you're not really paying attention. So that's the first part. Let's make sure we're using different stories. But the other thing that makes this so important is we're talking about them. That was a small accounting firm. They had less than 40 users. The news that we shared was about bigger organizations. It's news. It's big numbers, big companies. The other thing that's happening is we're sharing something bad that's happened to somebody else. Why is that important? That illustrates risk for them. That gets them to slow down. Maybe it gets them to rethink whether the roads are icy or not. And then you're going to offer them protections from those risks. That's the last piece. That's the project piece. Instead of saying, okay, guys, here's a list of projects I want to do to fix all this stuff, we're going to stop after user errors, after we go through all those things. We're going to say, all right, do you have any questions? What do you think the question that they're going to bring up is? How do we get this stuff taken care of? That's the question. That's what they're going to ask. And that's where we want to drive them. So if we can get to them to that spot, now all of a sudden, we're in a really good place from a conversation standpoint. We're in a really good place when it comes to actually getting them to move forward. Now, I know a number of you guys are thinking, okay, how can I get this done? And some of you are thinking I could just use whatever tools, like maybe you have some other product that you can just run inside of the environment. I want to caution you on this. And the reason that I want to caution you on this is you want to avoid this question. The question of, why haven't you been doing this all along? How did you miss this stuff? What are you doing for us if you're not catching these things? That's the key piece. That's the reason that you have a third party do this assessment for you. Because when a third party does it, they don't ask this question anymore, because what's happening is you're bringing a new resource to the table and you're saying, hey, I have this third party, they analyze our environment and they do a couple of our client environments. Would you like to be one of them this month or this quarter? The reason that you do it that way, the reason you offer the third party analysis is because then you can go on to say, they're going to find some stuff. This is all they do. Let's take a look closer. So you offer an analysis. And when you offer that analysis, it's a third-party analysis. I recommend you say, we have 3 available this month. Now, as our partners, you guys know that we'll do as many penetration tests as you need if you're on our Galactic Watch program. But your client doesn't need to know that, because that creates a little bit of scarcity. The next thing that you're going to do is you're going to say, if you Google how much the pen test costs, they run between $10,000 and $30,000. And we're bringing this third party in as a resource because we're interested in what they find. This is all they do. They break into networks, they display how they get in, and that keeps you the trusted advisor because you're the one bringing that resource in. Now, how often do you want to do this? You're going to want to do this quarterly. And I know some of you are thinking, well, what about continuous vulnerability analysis? Like, what if we just monitor the vulnerabilities and we tell them about the vulnerabilities in these meetings and everything will be okay? And there's one word: habituation. You might not be familiar with this. Some of you probably are. Here's what happens. When somebody sees a risk, or there's a perceived risk in an environment, over time, if you continue to see it and there's no change and it doesn't hurt you, you start to pay less attention to it. Let me give you an example. Here's my favorite example. You're probably familiar with this block of loveliness, right? And you're probably familiar with this guy. Well, this guy will not eat this block of loveliness or run over and grab it if it's being protected by a cat, unless the cat doesn't do anything for a long period of time. Another example of that, which is kind of my favorite, is this. How do you think this particular mechanism works? Because it's been around for a long time and it seems to get the job done. And the thing is that little mouse, when the first time they see that little piece of cheese, is not like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna go grab that piece of cheese. Instead, they're like, wow, that piece of cheese looks suspicious. I'm scared. There's risk here. I'm not going over there. And then over time, nothing happens. They might even get really close and snip the cheese and nothing happens. And then maybe they take a little tiny piece and nothing happens. And then they grab the entire thing and, well, you know what happens from there. So why is this such a problem? What we're talking about is reduction in response, gradually becoming desensitized, and then finally complacency. Does that sound familiar? Because that's what happens in networks over time in both technical and non-technical purviews. As in, your engineers do the same thing as your users. When there's a risk, at first they're like, holy shnikes, this is a really terrible, scary thing. And then they become complacent over time if it's not fixed. So we do not want to go through and continuously tell people about a risk. Instead, we want to do a quarterly cadence. And one of the things we do is we do a monthly analysis as well, just to make sure that nothing crazy is going on. All right, so why do we want to go through a process? We've gone through each of these other steps. We got them to be the star. Now it's time to follow a process. But why a process? And here's the answer. You can get from point A to point B many different ways. But there's one way from point A to point B that is the most efficient, the most effective, the one that delivers the best results every single time. And once in a while, well, things go a little crazy and you might not follow the process. You might not end up where you want to be. You might end up somewhere else. And when that happens, you don't get the results you want. So this is why we want to follow a process. The other thing that happens is as you improve a process over time, you get closer and closer to that straight line. If you change it, quote unquote, improving it, and it takes longer, maybe it takes you a lot longer to get to that endpoint. If that happens, that means that you need to go back and take out that improvement and move back to your original one. So the question that you want to be thinking to yourself is, how do we make this repeatable? Now, if you're a Galactic partner out there, what you can do is you can actually do all of this with your current plan. We have something called a level 1 penetration test where we will go through and we'll analyze as many of your clients and prospects as you'd like us to You send them the link, they click on the link, we analyze their security, and we give you a report within 2 business days. Now, that's pretty straightforward, but how do you make this repeatable? What am I talking about? Well, here's the thing. I ran an MSP. I get it. There are these little things called emergency tickets. They pop up all the time. And getting things like an assessment done every single quarter is hard to do. I'm going to tell you that one of our partners reached out to us a few days ago asking us to backdate a report. We don't do that, by the way. So if you want something backdated, we're not the right folks for that. But he wanted us to backdate a report because his team was going through and they were doing this quarterly and they forgot to do an assessment 1 quarter. And now there's going to be something called a SOC exception report as part of the SOC 2 for one of their clients. You don't want this to happen, and neither do we. So we put together this program. It's called Client Watch. It's very simple. We have agents that you can install. We'll go through, we'll provide you a draft report. You can fix issues if you want to. And then finally, we'll give you a report that you can share with your client as a final third-party report. And you'll use that same sales process that we talked about, each of those individual steps, and that will lead you to a result. But why would they want to do a recurring assessment? And that's pretty simple. First, it improves security. And for you, like, why would you want to do this? Well, it reduces your liability because you have a third party going through and analyzing the environment. It helps your client understand why they should invest in your security tools. It increases your project sales. It protects you from competitors because, guys, if you don't know this already, your competitors are also trying to offer free assessments of your clients. If they offer a free assessment and your client's already paying for an assessment, they're going to say, we have that covered already. We don't need you to come and do one because we have a third party that already does this. It improves your QBRs. It makes it easily monthly recurring revenue and is highly profitable. That's why you'll want to do this. But why do they want to do it? Super simple. It gives them peace of mind. And it gives them a ability to understand where blind spots are. And it goes through and it reviews cyber hygiene. It gives you some way to be able to have cyber risks put in one spot. And it's focused on their team, which is much more interesting when they start to think about it. There's also a reduction, detection of new vulnerabilities that we're providing. This does fulfill the cybersecurity insurance requirements, and it fulfills these different new compliance requirements like FTC safeguards. So what's the biggest mistake on this? I'll tell you, the biggest mistake is giving this away. I was talking to one of our partners who went through and actually is doing this right now. He did his first QBR and he sold $9,000 of security project. Now, this is to a client of his that was spending roughly $3,000 per month. He then went through and provided them a quote for Client Watch. He was able to make 298% margin. So he's charging $897 per month. We're charging him $220 a month. And he got that $9,000 in project worth. This is the easiest way for you to increase revenue while going through and reducing risk. But not only that, it puts you at the top of the stack. It makes it so that when you have this basic IT, this advanced security, the compliance as a service, it gives you this spot where you're actually measuring those things. So if somebody comes in, let's say that your client brings in somebody to replace you from a compliance as a service standpoint, or an advanced security standpoint, or a basic IT standpoint, our reports give you the ability to continue to analyze that and push them out of the environment. This is not just a vulnerability analysis, folks. This is a third-party analysis, a full analysis, not just a penetration test. Our partners charge between $375 and $11,000 a month for this. It does fulfill insurance requirements. And again, it reduces that liability and risk while increasing your revenue. And I know some of you guys are thinking to yourself, well, gosh, I already built this in. I am already providing them a free vulnerability assessment that I'm doing myself. And guys, there's an easy way to explain why you need a third party to do this. The explanation is simple. We can't proofread our own work. we want somebody other than our engineers to come through and do this. You would never ask your accountant to audit themselves. So we're going to go through and at least have this done once. And then having the recurring component, once they sign up for that, you can just say, you know, they're already doing these vulnerability assessments. I'm just going to stop doing them on my side. And then that's taken care of for you. So your mission this week is simple. I want you to focus on your most profitable clients and get them started on Client Watch. Now, that's for all of the folks on the call who aren't already Galactic partners. Now, I know there's probably 15 or 20 of you out there who are not yet using Galactic, and you're probably wondering, are you that MSP? Are you that one that would spread ransomware to every single device? The thing is, guys, like I said earlier, you can't proofread your own work. And so what I like to do is offer a third-party analysis for you. We'll go through and we'll actually see whether your security tools will stop an attack. And I have to tell you that I just went through a readout with one of the folks on a call like this. It was on Tuesday morning, and I pointed out that even though they had invested in a SASE, S-A-S-E, you can Google that if you're not sure what it is, even though they had invested in a SASE, they didn't actually have it turned on properly, and we were able to move a malicious payload across their wire. This is the type of stuff that we will uncover for you, and it's not a question about whether or not your team is doing the right things. It's a question of whether your tools are actually doing what you expect them to be doing. If you'd like to do one of these assessments, do me a favor, www.galacticscan.com/stack. We'll go through, we'll analyze your security, we'll show you how your tools respond. We'll give you some steps that you can take, and you're probably wondering, what's the catch, guys? There's no catch. I'm on a mission to help protect 1 million people, and going through and doing these assessments, that's how we're doing this. We did 6,000 of them last year, just over 6,000. And when I was running my MSP, I had one of these done, cost over $10,000 to have somebody come in and show me half of the things that my team will uncover. So if that's something that you're interested in, again, www.galacticscan.com/stack. That's what I had to cover today. Jeff, are there any questions or anything that we should be going through and answering?
Yeah, so Cindy was asking here, she might have gotten answered by someone else in here. Where can you get the phone risk assessment?
I'm sorry, where can you get this? Say again?
The phone risk assessment there when you were walking through the 5 steps.
Yep. So if you're a Robin Robbins client, go ahead and search for my name. I did a session with Robin in June of 2020, maybe 2021. That session goes through and it talks about those questions that you could ask. We also, if you're a Galactic partner, they're in our portal, and that's part of the pen test process. So like we actually have it built right into the process. When you put that prospect into the system, there it then asks you the questions so that you can go through and ask those questions and get on top of it. So either way, you can get it both ways, and that would be a great way to go through and grab that info.
Yeah, and if you look on the dashboard for current members, there are quite a few with Bruce on there, and so it is one of those ones that's on there. There's about 4 or 5 different sessions that are on there, all in Bruce's nice pink shirt.
I got to get that switched out. I've been wearing black shirts. That's like that's old school.
Faraz is asking here, how is the Galactic product different from Enable Risk Assessment or even Kaseya vulnerability / network detective products?
Yeah, absolutely. So here's the thing, guys. Even if it's not different at all, even if it's zero difference, like let's say that my team was using one of those products to analyze your environment. We're not, we have our own stuff, but let's just say that that's what we were doing. The major difference is we are a third party that's doing the analysis. Those products are tools that you can use in your environment to do the analysis. However, you're analyzing your own work, and when you go through and you share those results with your client, they're going to say, why the hell haven't you fixed this since you already knew about it? Obviously you bought the tools to figure this out. Why aren't you doing it? The difference is In this case, we're a third party bringing that feedback to you, which positions it in such a way that you can have an easy conversation about how we're going to go through and fix the things that are related to us. And you should fix the things that are related to you, Mr. Client or Mrs. Client.
Yeah, and for us, I would encourage you as part of this, if you haven't worked with Bruce and Galactic, take advantage of this right here, the free assessment of your cybersecurity stack. I hear about it over and over again of like, wow, I didn't even realize that I was doing this or that. Again, it's an example of this, of proofing your own work here and being able to get it. We've got, I'm sure, hundreds of our members just from talking with them, just in Producers Club alone, that swear by this, of the analysis and looking at it, and you get great feedback on it here. And so it's an easy way to be able to kind of continue the conversation and see if, hey, what is the tool stack? This is not specifically of where it's not just a, hey, here's our tool stack here, and that's what we're going to get there. You're actually going to get this assessment of your cybersecurity stack, and it's a great, valuable tool, free offer that Bruce has here and Galactic has as a way of introducing to the Galactic methodology.
Yeah, Jeff, you're absolutely right. If you're wondering what the difference is, the easy way to figure it out is to go through the analysis, and we'll show you. And we'll show you exactly how we give reports versus how others do. But I just also want to point out that there's a major difference in that it's a completely different product. We have a lot of partners that have both of those different tools that you mentioned today, and they still use us because they want that third-party perspective. They want that third party to go through and do that analysis and proofread their work for them.
Yeah, so a couple more quick questions on here before we wrap up. Izzy was asking, do your tools work well for banks?
We have a number of partners that use them in smaller community banks, and the largest environment we've done, it wasn't a bank, but the largest environment we've done so far has been 27,000 endpoints. So I can tell you that it works in all sizes of environments. And the reason I was slow to respond is because we are doing a penetration test. And so please make sure that you get their permission before you have us break into their network. Thank you. It's also known as bank robbing. I don't know.
Yeah. I like that you explained of why the slowness on that it wasn't necessarily a thought of like, hey, we don't do well in banks. It was, I don't want to get arrested and be felony charges.
Exactly where my head was, Jeff.
Yeah, absolutely. One last question, and this might be even kind of before I'm going through this, the security stack, but Faraz had a follow-up question. Do you have certain license requirements or kind of minimums, that type of stuff? How does it work in working with Galactic?
Yeah, working with Galactic is very simple. We do it based on the number of users in your environment. So the reason we do that is we know that an MSP that has 2 employees versus one that has 20 employees, the one with 20 employees is going to bring us a lot more analysis work. So we charge them more. So we have it broken down based on the number of people on your team. And that also, I mentioned training a little bit earlier. We're kind of focused on the pen test side right now, but let me just tell you that a lot of our partners use our programs to move from just being an MSP to move up to becoming an MSSP. Because if you think about it, all of your engineers are interested in security. The problem is getting them to have the resources they need to actually grow their capabilities. We have over 200 hours of training, of security training in our portal at this point in time. Everything from how to model risk, which would be a conversation like a CISO would have with their team or the board, to getting down into the nitty-gritty of how to go through and hijack a password over server message block. Like, we go through all that stuff, and that's the type of stuff that your engineers are really interested in. And also that's this type of stuff that will help you move your organization from being an MSP selling basic IT services to being somebody that's able to perform and deliver those advanced security stacks.
Yeah, great. No, that's wonderful. I hadn't heard on how your pricing works, so that's great to know with that. Well, Bruce, fantastic presentation. I appreciate every time. Makes it super easy where I don't even have to really do anything. I can sit here for an hour and just let you go.
I don't know, Jeff. You did have to do some things. Like you had to talk a little bit of extra time.
I had to juggle a little bit for 2 or 3 minutes when you were decided to hit leave webinar. So
well, I was just like, it can't be serious. Like there has to be another button back here somewhere. No, it was it. That left the webinar.
Yeah. So
speaking of leaving the webinar, everybody.
If you haven't worked with Galactic Scan before, make sure that you go check it out, galacticscan.com/stack. Take a look at it. Get your assessment of your cybersecurity stack for your MSP business. Even more important to start there than starting with your clients with this. And you're going to get some great information from Bruce and his team on that. Bruce, it's been great talking with you on this. I appreciate it for everyone out here. We'll get this posted up to the MSP Success Magazine webinar archives within the next 24 hours. But until next time on the next webinar, thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.